What does it really mean to hold space? And why is it so hard to do it in the thick of motherhood and midlife? Maybe this is the first time that you've heard the phrase, or maybe you've heard it often, but actually living it, that's a whole different story. At its core, holding space means showing up with presence, not pressure. It means witnessing someone's pain or growth without needing to fix, change, or rush the process. But here's the question. How do we hold space for others, our kids, our friends, and still hold space for ourselves? Welcome to Motherhood and the Messy Middle, where we're unpacking the powerful and often misunderstood practice of holding space in a world that constantly tells us to hurry up, hold it together, and keep going. Welcome to Motherhood and the Messy Middle, where grade school meets grown kids, hot flashes meet holy fire, and no topic is too messy for this village. I'm Robin, one half of the voice behind this podcast. Nicole and I are two moms who slid into each other's DMs and built a virtual village where we are inviting you into our honest, healing, and often hilarious conversations that help you feel not so alone in the beautiful chaos of motherhood and midlife. We talk about what it really means to mother, to grow, to fall apart, and rebuild, spiritually, emotionally, hormonally, and sometimes all before breakfast. So whether you're in the thick of motherhood, facing perimenopause, praying hard, or just tired of pretending you're fine, this space is for you. Let's dive in. So Nicole, in our last episode, we were chatting about friendships in the middle years, and this phrase, holding space, it kept coming up. And it comes up in a lot of our conversations lately.
Right.
Now, it's a phrase for me that I use a lot, especially when I'm working with clients with holistic weight loss and wellness, and also really when I'm leading spiritual work with retreats and
sure.
facilitating things.
Yeah.
But you brought up to me that it's a phrase that you were recently introduced to and that you think a lot of women might not know but could benefit from. So
I do.
tell me more about that. Tell me what your thoughts are.
Well, I'm a mental health advocate with an organization, a nonprofit called Speak Out. And when I started working with Lauren, she uses that phrase a lot, holding space. And we're talking about mental health and we're talking about suicidal ideation and all those things. We're talking about holding space for someone who's hurting. And she did this beautiful example of it. And that's when I kind of put together that I'd heard the term maybe loosely before, but I'd never really seen a tangible, like what that means. And then once I realized what that actually means to hold space for somebody, I understood the gravity of it. And I was so even more grateful for people who could hold space and knew how to do that well. And then what I have learned, the older I get, is areas where I think I'm the only one who doesn't know is actually a lie that I've told myself, and that it's more common that unless you're in spaces that is using terminology like that, I don't think we all know what that means. And so I would love, you kind of gave us a little brief overview of it in the intro, but I feel like you will probably give a really good example and definition of what holding space means, at least for you, and maybe how you teach it to your clients. So how do you explain holding space?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that because it's not something that I've ever directly taught on.
Explained?
Yeah, it's not a
Okay.
topic. And so that's why it has been something that when you say, your perspective creates reality. And so from my perspective, I'm in a lot of circles where we're using
Right.
a lot of that terminology. And my professional background started as a high school math teacher and an administrator. And we were doing so much work around trauma-informed instruction. And
Which is great.
yeah, and it really, for me, it's trauma-informed instruction is similar to how I approach the whole concept of like an individual education plan. Why don't we all have access to that? Aren't we all individuals?
Yeah.
Don't we all have some form, especially in modern life, of exposure to trauma?
Yeah.
And the more that we have the ability to inform ourselves in ways that we can show up that just really honor other people, the better that our world becomes.
Right.
To get to your question on how I would define holding space, it's not a physical thing. It's about energy. It's about emotion, and it really is about being able to sit in the discomfort.
Yeah. we use the terminology, like, I say that you hold space well for me, and it really is, even though I'm benefiting from it, so much of it is the work that you're doing by holding back almost, like,
Mm,
you're not fixing it, and you're sitting in your own discomfort while I'm having my own discomfort, but I feel like it's harder to hold space because 'cause you're holding back so much so the other person can fill up the space.
mm. Well, we live in a time, especially where we're so hurried, and there's
Mhm,
a lot that is really surface. And I
mhm,
talk a lot about, mindset and shifting energy, but that's not toxic positivity.
right,
And that toxic positivity is pervasive in our culture where people don't want to sit in discomfort, don't want to see people upset. And, especially as moms, it makes sense. It's hard. It's hard on our
right.
hearts to see other people, our children,
Yes.
especially
S
suffering.
yes.
And it doesn't mean that I want the suffering to happen, but it is not my job to fix things for other people.
Yeah,
And, we've talked about the name of this podcast, Motherhood
yeah,
and the Messy Middle. The messy middle exists in so many different ways. And, we've defined it as really that sweet spot where miracles
mhm,
are made of growing,
mhm,
and it can be really uncomfortable. So I would
yeah,
say, relating to what the work that we're doing now and the conversations we're having, holding space is being in that messy middle
mhm,
and allowing it to be,
mhm,
but it's not a passive act. It's not just
right,
sitting back and saying, "Oh, I'm not any power here. I
right.
can't do anything." It's about
Sh
allowing the whatever needs to come up and come through in others or even in yourself. And that, my friend, is the hardest, is in
right,
our own lives.
right. I think it's shifting, reactions too, because
Mm,
like you're saying, we can't fix it, but the vocabulary can also change to, how can I support you? And sometimes, like we've talked about so many times here so far, and we'll continue to talk about, is being seen, helping someone feel seen in whatever they're going through is enough. And just to feel, like you said, the presence, whether it's emotional or physical, is enough. And that's uncomfortable for us, but that's holding space for them to be able to feel all of their emotions. And part of holding space for me is, like I said in our other episode, is circling back, like checking back in. Maybe I don't want to talk about it right now, but you're holding space for me, but you circle back and how's it going? Do you need any other support? Are you still feeling supported? If there's something that I can do, I don't know if you actually ask about if there's something you can do, but just circling back so it's not like we're just brushing it to the side. Like, I can't help you with it. So we're just moving on and we're never going to talk about it again. It's reminding you that, like, I'm still here should you need the support. And I'm holding the space for you even a week from now. It's not all just immediate. I don't know.
yeah, that makes sense. I didn't tell you about this before we started recording this episode, but in our last episode talking about friends, I mentioned my best friend who
Hmm.
I've had since kindergarten. And by the grace of God, he actually reached out to me today and asked
Oh,
for a
I love
phone
that.
call. And we had a call. And he he's had a lot of different health things. And he just informed me that he has a retinal detachment.
Oh, no.
And so he has like 90% blindness in one of his eyes, and he's having
Oh,
surgery
Robin.
next week. Wait for this, Nicole. After the surgery, the care is that he has to be face down for a week because of how they have to. The retina, I guess, is in the back of your eye, and you can't allow any pressure or gas bubbles or something else. So
That's
he has to
crazy.
be like, those massage chairs like at,
Yeah.
at a mall or something
Mhm.
like that.
That has, like, the open face.
Yep. He has to get those. And then there's ones that he can get for surfaces. So that's how he has to eat. And there's a mirror in order to be able to watch television. So it will mirror
That's
the image.
crazy.
So talk about holding space. I didn't know I didn't know what to say. And I just
Right.
want to normalize that I do this work. I have been
Mm.
friends with this man for 37 years.
Mhm.
And there's very little that we cannot say to each other. And, we're a distance from each other. So holding space isn't being in the physical room and
Right.
just waiting. When you're in digital relations,
Right.
it's kind of strange to just sit in silence, right?
Right.
But it was owning how uncomfortable I was feeling for him
Mhm.
and creating some pause within myself. That's why I practice building inner
Mhm.
fitness so that
Yeah.
I could mess up and I would apologize for it, but I want to be intentional that I don't say something that it takes him further down a
Sure.
rabbit hole that he doesn't need to go down because
Yeah.
this is a big deal. And
Yeah.
he wishes that he could have surgery today versus on Monday because that's a long period right now. It's a Thursday. That's a long
Yeah.
period of the anxiety of what is this going to be like and then 7 days of having to do all of these
Yeah.
things. Um, but that's an example of holding space where I listened to him
Mhm.
and I basically just said, "This sucks."
Yeah. It's a lot of affirming,
Affirming, and
listening
then,
and
"What
affirming.
can I do for you?"
Right.
And, what I would add in as a layer as someone who, this is a medical diagnosis, and it's something that could happen, even when I'm dealing my daughter's gonna have hernia surgery. That's been a very
Mhm.
unexpected thing we weren't anticipating.
Right.
And so holding a lot of space for her when she has big emotions about it,
Mhm.
even if we've processed them and they
Mhm.
resurge, even if it
Mhm.
doesn't make sense for me, the
Mhm.
first piece is honoring what is, and that she is valid to have those
Mhm.
emotions, and honoring now my friend that, man, this situation is awful.
Mhm.
Awful. And if there's anything he said, "I don't know what you could do." And I said, "If there is anything you can think of, I pick a book and I'll buy it and I'll call you and we can read it."
Mhm.
Then
Yeah.
coming up with a suggestion.
Yeah.
But for my own mental health journey, one of the things that I want most for people to hold space when I am in times of challenge is to not necessarily asking me what I need. I understand and I really appreciate that. Saying something is always better than saying nothing,
Yes.
but not expecting me to be able to offer you what you can do to fix me. You see? And
Yeah.
that it's a really complicated
Yeah.
situation, but being human and doing humanness well is
Mhm.
it's complicated and we also have
Yeah.
the capacity to do it.
Yeah.
So having just that this conversation around what holding space is, that can be enough to start
Mhm.
that shift of being able to build that skill because it's normalizing that this is something that we can do and that we can struggle through to be able to
Mhm.
hold for other people.
I think it's just like we're talking in the meditation and prayer about meditation and prayer, just starting. Like this is the starting point, having the conversation, listening, learning, and just start slow. Like don't expect that you're all of a sudden going to know how to hold like this mass. Like it takes time. You're learning something new that you may not have done. So give yourself grace and show up small and then it will turn, it flows into more, but don't get
Ooh,
discouraged.
I love that though. That is some real wisdom right there. To show up. It's not making yourself just smaller, but it's
Mm-hmm.
allowing yourself, it's even thinking about physically a smaller voice, a
Mm-hmm.
gentler voice, slower, calmer, smaller actions,
Mm-hmm.
stillness.
It
To
really
even just
is.
be able to sit with that person
Because
who's
even
having
what you
that
said
challenge.
about your daughter and big emotions, that's how for my youngest, we show up when sometimes when he's struggling, we used to ask, "Well, what's going on?" I don't really ask that anymore because it doesn't really matter what's going on.
Yeah.
And eventually he'll tell us if we create space and support him right where he's at with what he's struggling with by uh, in whatever ways that he needs, but eventually it'll then come out maybe why he's feeling this way, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes he just needs us to hold space for his really big feelings. We don't know why he's feeling that way. I don't exactly know always what made it feel better, but I know that we held space for him and then he was able to bounce back.
So how are you doing that, in situations that you might not understand and that are pulling at every heartstring that you have for your child? Like What is the mental dialogue, that inner coach that you have going on inside that's helping you to create
Sure.
that space?
Honestly, it's just a lot of putting myself in his shoes. Like, how many times do I don't even struggle with depression or anxiety, and I can still wake up and feel down.
Mhm.
I can still wake up and feel like even today, honestly, I'd like to punch some people in the face. I was having a hard day, and the and I'm an adult, and so I think if I'm him and do have these diagnoses, and I do struggle with suicidal ideations at a young age, I probably can't always identify as an adult if I can't always identify why I feel in a funk. Maybe he can't identify why he's in a funk. And when I'm in a funk, what do I want? I don't want someone badgering me like, "What's wrong?" "Well, why do you feel that way?" "Well, what do you need?" "Well, maybe you need to eat something." "Well, maybe you need more sleep." "Well, maybe you should go on a walk." "Well, maybe you should not watch that TV show." "Well, maybe you had too much screen time," or maybe it's because you watched that movie or because you hung out with that friend. That doesn't make me feel better.
No, and even as you say it and that pace, and that is the
Yeah.
pace of reacting versus responding, and
Right.
none of those things are with ill intentions, though. That's the
Absolutely
other
not.
thing. That
Right.
this isn't a good or bad situation. There
No.
are 1 bazillion shades of gray with all of this, and it's just
100%.
meeting people where they're at. When I hear you talk about this, what you are doing is you're exercising empathy. You just
Mm,
named, that you've fortunately never had a formal diagnosis around
right.
a mental health struggle, but you've been able to take just that little kernel of an experience,
Mhm.
and because you intended to have empathy and to hold compassion for that, empathy is taking on an emotion that you might not have, but knowing how to look at it as if it's your own so that you can show up for another person.
Yeah.
And that's really a very advanced emotional intelligence thing to do.
Mm,
And for me, I have a lot of empathy,
mhm.
but I've had a lot of trying times and struggle and
Mhm.
different experiences that those kernels were like big, huge stalks of the corn cob, or
Yeah.
whatever analogy I'm using here that is just ridiculous. And now I want popcorn. Anywho, looking at that though, when I to know someone like you who has not been through the same level of especially childhood trauma or mental
Right.
health struggles or addiction struggles, but I feel seen because you practice empathy,
Mm.
that's holding space.
So is holding space really then just practicing empathy? Is that like an oversimplified way of
I don't think it's
defining it?
oversimplified. I think that it's an aspect of it. It would be, if we're talking about what the actual act of or
Yeah.
actions of holding space are, it would be stillness.
Mhm.
It would be listening,
Mhm.
listening to understand
Right, not
versus
listening to respond.
mhm,
Mhm.
and it would be also be then more of the internal actions around shifting that dialogue around empathy. But, empathy, compassion, those are practices that we have to
Mhm.
do in order to grow them.
Mhm.
And I talk a lot about how it's more challenging to have self-compassion and empathy
Ugh.
than, so that leads to the question though, have you ever experienced holding space for yourself?
Mm.
Can you name an
No.
experience where you
No.
perhaps have done that? No?
I mean, maybe if I really started if I thought about it, but right off the top of my head, no.
Why do you think that it's easier to hold space for other people than for yourself?
I think it's, like, what's innately in me because even though I'm not fixing it, I still feel like I'm a part of supporting them, and so I want other people to feel better.
Mhm.
I don't know. What about you?
Well, I think that it's natural as a mother, we're the heartbeats of our homes, we're the caretakers of our communities, and it
Mhm.
is easier to care for others. But in the midst of all of that, as that is part of our natural, underpinnings, so it's easier to hold space for others. we can get lost and we can lose what we actually need in order to, the very common phrase now, put our oxygen mask on before
Right.
putting it on
Right.
everyone else.
Right.
And so I don't know that it is something that has to actively be practiced, or that it's something that anyone should feel any type of guilt or shame
Mhm.
or any of that about. It's just something to be able to know what the phrase means. And once
Yeah.
we have awareness, then we can start exploring if we want to start using it. And if it's easier to start practicing holding space for others, especially when we're in some trying times with our partner or our friend or our
Mhm.
children, then once we practice something, one of my favorite phrases that I use is that practice makes permanence. It doesn't
Mhm.
make perfect. We're never going to show
Mhm.
up perfect. We're human. But the more that we practice something literally in our brains, the synaptic connections, I love using
Mhm.
my fancy words,
I know.
they start making these neural pathways, these highways, that it becomes an automatic response. And
Mhm.
so that's how we can rewire our brain, is through practice. We can
Yeah.
program to be able to hold more space, to be able to be more empathic. Um, but it's not just empathy, because so many of us have empathy, but
Mhm.
in that empathy, we aren't comfortable with the discomfort and we try to fix.
Well, I know what a lot of this comes down to is what we talked about before, and even with the mental health episode, getting really comfortable with being really
Discomfort.
uncomfortable.
hmm
Yeah, it's the discomfort piece. It's so challenging.
It is. And that's where building inner fitness
Yep.
is the foundation of all that I
Yeah.
teach. And when women, especially in midlife, start struggling with weight, or
Mhm.
continuing to struggle with weight
Yeah.
and their identity around it, my first piece is, how do we create peace? How do we
Mm.
create calm? Because mind, body, spirit are all connected. And when we are in that discomfort, our body is shooting out cortisol and adrenaline, and it's trying to
Right.
hold on to safety. And extra weight is literally your body's
Right.
like safety blanket.
Right.
So, even something that I would love to offer up to all of us is this idea of visualization. And when we are in scenarios that are uncomfortable, thinking of a blanket.
Mm.
And I mentioned in another episode, a
A
shroud of
shawl.
forgiveness. Yeah.
Okay. Why was I thinking shawl?
Because I think that it's the same thing. I'm going to have to
Okay.
actually look it up and see.
I
It just
like your
sounds
def
like a
I
more
like
older term of
I
it.
like
But
your terminology better, so don't change it.
with a shroud of forgiveness, it's, why don't we have a shroud of holding space
Mhm. That's
to
good.
just settle in and be able to be there? Because holding space is not passive, it's intentional, and it
Mhm.
is where the magic of connection
Mhm.
really happens. And that's where the beauty of motherhood really flourishes, is in that connection.
You nailed it, friend. It's beautiful.
Well, what a great place to wrap up this episode. And it's, something that with holding space, we can practice imperfectly and
Mhm.
intentionally every single
Messy.
day. Yep.
Mhm.
The mess is real. And remember that this isn't just about being a mom and doing this for your kids. It can also be for your partner, for your friends.
Yep.
But most importantly, it can be for you, for
Yeah.
yourself. So, if this conversation gave you something to think about, or maybe it just helped you to breathe a little deeper and feel as some space was being held for you, we truly hope that you'll share it with another mom who needs to hear it. Let's normalize that quiet strength of holding space for each other and for ourselves. And if you haven't already, please, a quick rating or review. It goes a really long way in helping other moms find this podcast. So we'll see you next week right here in the messy middle. Bye,
Bye,
friends.
guys.
Hey, before you go, we've got something just for you. We created the Motherhood and the Messy Middle Resource Vault. It's a growing library of support that's just for you. So inside, you're going to find tools from both Nicole and my work, plus resources that we mention right here on the podcast. It's free, it's sent straight to your inbox, and it's always evolving, just like you. So take what you need, leave the rest. You never know when you're going to need it, or when your group chat might thank you for it. So use the link in the show notes, or head to motherhoodandthemessymiddle.com to get access, and welcome to your virtual village.